Hello, friends. My wife and I just got back from a week vacation where we spent a few days in South Carolina with my family and then another 3 or 4 days in Knoxville, Tennessee. And on that trip, we did a ton of book shopping. We went to 4 different stores. I ended up getting, I think, 16 or 17 books in total. So many that I had to ship them and not just pack them in my suitcase. So this might be the last book haul for the year. It might be the last book haul for quite a while, as I need to start to chew away at all the books I've been buying, get that read to unread ratio in a bit of a better place. So that's what I'm going to be sharing today is all those books I bought, because there are a lot of very unique ones. There's a lot of books that and writers that I've been looking for at bookstores and been unable to find for whatever reason. So a lot of new authors to me, hopefully a lot of new books and suggestions for you. And I'm just excited to talk about them. And before we get to the books, I got to give a shout out to my amazing wife. She owns an embroidery company and is currently making these bookish Halloween themed sweatshirts. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link down in the description. But let's get to the books. The first bookstore we went to was in Myrtle Beach, and it's a store called Bookends, and I ended up getting 3 books there. The first of which being another novel from John Irving, this one called A Son of the Circus. And if you watch my review of The World According to Garp, really loved the book, loved Irving's writing, and I was asking for some recommendations on what Irving book I should read next. And a lot of you gave different options, and when I was in the store, I saw a few of the novels you recommended, but I ended up picking up A Son of the Circus. I'm curious to see how I'll like it, because some of the reviews or responses I saw about it is that it's very strange, is that it's very audacious. So it might work for me, it might not. I think I picked it up instead of, I believe it's called A Prayer to, or A Prayer for Owen Meany. Think I picked this because it was just a tad shorter and the edition was just in a little bit better shape. So anyway, I wanted to read more of Irving, so I got that. And then I thought I was done at the store because it had a ton of mass market copies. It had a ton of like Lee Child and Nora Roberts and just those, a ton of like mass market kind of paperbacks, like Your Born Ultimatum type books and all of that. And so I thought, oh, it might just not be a store that has a bunch of literary fiction or poems or more serious literature, classics, things like that. And then lo and behold, after I checked out, my wife and I, and my mom was with me as well, we're about to leave. I looked to the left, and right by the front door is a kind of chest level shelf of classics. And I was like, crap. Well, now I got to go through this. So I made my wife and mom wait for a minute as I got on my knees, and I was like looking along the shelves trying to find stuff. And I actually found some great books that I've been meaning to look out for. I just haven't been able to either find an edition I want or find it at all in my local bookstores here in Colorado. And one of those was As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. Faulkner is a massive name, specifically in American literature. And specifically, I've been looking for either Faulkner or O'Connor. And I see O'Connor a lot, but usually in like a collected works. And I'm not against getting a collected works, but I want something to just, sink my feet in or get my toes wet with. So I thought this would be a good chance for me to kind of dabble with Faulkner, get my toes wet, and hopefully I can find a short story of Flannery O'Connor as well here soon, because both of them are names that I've been keeping an eye out for. And then the other book I picked up was a copy of Ulysses by James Joyce. I see copies of Ulysses a lot in stores near me, but either they're full price or they are kind of these bigger, clunky, gloss-covered books that just don't feel like they would, feel enjoyable to hold and read over duration. And also, I'm in no rush to read Ulysses. But I did find this nice vintage classics edition. And these books just always, they feel good in your hand. They hold up well. I feel like this would be an enjoyable copy in addition to read. So I ended up picking it up. I don't remember quite how much it was, but that was the first bookstore. 3 simple books. And I don't think I'll read any of them too soon. As I Lay Dying, I probably will read before the end of the year. But the other ones will be, they might collect a little bit of dust on the shelf before I get to them later next year. Then we drove over to Nashville, and my wife and I had 3 different bookstores we wanted to check out while we were in town. The first of which is a store called Addison's. It's in the downtown Knoxville area, and I really like this store because it was very different from all the rest because it's a rare book or collectible book type of store. So the selection wasn't that big, but it was very nice in there. It was very aesthetic. The clerks or owners that were there were very friendly, and they even showed my wife and I the oldest books that he had in the store. It was these two books, tiny pocket-sized books from the 1500s, so that was very cool to see. And in that same cabinet that they kept locked, I also saw an early edition of Ulysses that was $2,000. So a bit more expensive than the copy I just showed you all, but very cool to see nonetheless. And I was able to walk away with 3 books that I found there. The first of which being Childhood from Maxim Gorky. And I've really been in the pursuit lately of trying to read more of these Russian writers that are on the outskirts of Russian literature, or they're not as much in the limelight as a Dostoevsky, a Turgenev, a Tolstoy, a Gogol, Pushkin. I'm really interested to read these writers, male and female, in the Soviet era that are a bit more on the outskirts or more tertiary names to think of when it comes to Russian literature. And you'll see a lot of those names later on in this video. One of them being Maxim Gorky. I haven't been able to find him in many bookstores around here, and I found 2 copies actually from him in the store. I only ended up buying one just because, one, they didn't have the full trilogy of these autobiographical works, but 2, they're a little bit more expensive. They're $20, so nothing crazy, but it was the first store we went to, and I didn't know how much I would buy later on, so I had to keep space in mind. So I ended up getting Childhood from him, or in Russian, Детство. And this, I believe, is in a trilogy with Childhood, My Apprenticeship, and My Universities. And like I said, it's an autobiographical work, so it'll be interesting to read this because I think some of the other works that he's known for a bit more are his fiction or short stories. But it'll at least give me a taste of Gorky and kind of his writing style and what he's working with. The next book is a one that I'm almost finished reading. You can see I only got about 30 pages left, and it's one I've been scouting for and trying to look for in bookstores. And I fortunately found what I think is a fairly unique edition, a very cool cover. And it's a book I mentioned in my last video, and that is The Painted Bird by Jerzy Kosinski. Very vile, obscene, vulgar work. It is not for the faint of heart. It is hard to read for probably most readers. And at the same time, despite its vulgarity, despite its obscenity, I find it very enjoyable to read. I can't entirely pinpoint why. Perhaps it's the narrative of the boy in the story and his kind of view of the world, and it's definitely getting a bit more obvious in its satirical manner by the end of the book, and being a bit more on the nose with the points it's trying to make. But really enjoying it, really like the book so far. It covers a young boy. You wouldn't call him an orphan per se, but a Jewish boy that his parents send him off so he doesn't get captured by the Germans. So they send him away to a village that's supposed to protect him. But he ends up not really being in that village for any short period of time. He's bouncing around from village to village, witnessing all kinds of atrocities, the worst shades of humanity, abuse, sexual violence, everything like that. It's very Candide-esque in the way that the boy views the world in a kind of naive way, because his expectations or view of humanity isn't quite yet formed. So it's interesting. There's a lot I probably could say, and a lot I probably need to think more about, but really enjoying it so far. And I started it only because I was heading home from my flight back here to Colorado, and I had already finished the book I had packed to read. And so I was looking at the books I had just bought, and it was between this and Faulkner because they're both around 200 pages, and I ended up just picking up this book. But very cool cover. I think it's either an Australian or British copy based off some of the writing or information on the inside. But very, very interesting and kind of ominous cover here with the boy there. But the last book I got from Addison's is another Penguin classic from Zola. If you saw, I think in the last book haul, I bought a Germinal from Zola, and a lot of you commented praising Zola's works. So when I saw another copy, I think for $6, I figured I'd grab it. So a nice kind of extra book to cap off the little trip at Addison's. Next, we traveled on over to McKay's in Knoxville, which has books, DVDs, video games. They have just about everything, it seems, entertainment-wise. And I like that one of you commented on a post I made on YouTube and said, McKay is the pride of Knoxville. So clearly it's fairly well known in the region. And I see why, because there are an overwhelming amount of books. I mean, the number of shelves, the amount of books packed on every shelf is truly overwhelming when you walk in there. I was quite inundated just going through the like mass market paperbacks and then realizing, oh, I need to go to the like full size book section for literature and start there before I start, stacking up too many things. So I did end up getting just 4 books at that store, and the prices are just hard to beat. I think 2 of the books were $2.50 each. Another book was $5, and the other one might have been like $5 or $8. So really, you get a crazy bargain at McKay's, and just a very interesting store. My wife, I think, only ended up getting 1 book there. She was specifically looking for the Robin Hobb fantasy series. I don't know the exact name of the series, but it's the one that deals with, what is his name? Fitzchivalry something. Any of you fantasy readers will know what I'm talking about. But she was looking for certain fantasy books. I guess they were being bought out quicker at McKay's than my books. But anyway, to what I got 2 books from Don DeLillo. He's a writer I've been trying to pick out lately. I just haven't been able to find a good used copy at my stores recently, but I got White Noise, nice little paperback here. And then I also got a hard copy of Libra. And I don't know a ton about either of these books. I just wanted to kind of, again, step into the world of Don DeLillo, see what he's all about. And the really only reason I got the hardcover was because there was a paperback copy and a hardcover. They were the same price, and this seemed to be in good condition. So rolled the dice on that and got 2 books from DeLillo. And then these are the books that shocked me, or one of them shocked me, the other one less so. First of which being Isaac Babel's Red Cavalry. This is another book from one of these more tertiary early Soviet writers, and this book covers the Civil War between the Red Army and White Army, something that is very fascinating to me that I don't think we, in American history with learning it in schools is what I mean, not American history in general. Of course, we won't cover it there. But in schools, I don't think the Civil War was covered that closely. And it's something that, whether it's in Quiet Flows of Dawn or different movies I've watched, I'm very curious about that whole Civil War that went on following the October Revolution. So this book should shed a good bit of light on that. So excited to read that. And then this is the book that blew my mind that I found it. Maybe it shouldn't blow my mind that much, but it felt so serendipitous. It felt just perfect. I don't know how else to describe it, but it is The 12 Chairs by Ilya Ilf and Yevgeny Petrov. I was so surprised to see this book there. I mean, of all Russian books that could be there, I mean, how many of you have heard of this book? Maybe a decent bit. Maybe I'm overplaying it, acting like no one could possibly hear of it. But it's not a Penguin classic. It's not really printed in that many editions. I mean, this is a European classic edition here. And lo and behold, I found it on the shelf. $2.50. Perfect edition. I could tell the person who bought it barely opened it because everything is still pretty stiff in it. And it's a book that I had saved on Amazon because I figured I'd be able to find it nowhere else. But luckily at McKay's, I was able to. So those were the 4 books I bought at McKay's. And then as a grand finale, I went to what I would call the best bookstore I went to of them all. It was a delightful trip. I really enjoyed my conversation with the owner of the store. And I actually had to ship all these books because I picked up so many when I was there. I ended up getting 6 books, and the owner thoughtfully added in one of his own recommendations as well in the box. So thank you so much, John, for adding that in. But this is a store called the Book Eddy. I believe he's owned this bookstore since 1991 is what he said. And over the years, it's changed locations and so forth, especially after the pandemic. I think they closed for a while and then reopened. So fortunately, it's not the same size supposedly as it once was, but it's still there. It's only open Friday and Saturday and then on appointment. So my wife and I were about to head there Sunday and went, crap, we're going to miss it. And it was a bookstore that I just had a feeling it was going to have a bunch of books I wanted. And it definitely did. So I DM'd him on Instagram, and fortunately he saw it like Monday midday around around noon, and said, "Hey, I'll be here from like 2 to 4, 2 to 3. You're happy to swing by." And I'm so glad I did, because I got a great stack here. So first, I'll talk about the book that he tossed in. It's a book I've never heard of, and when I was scanning the shelves at the store, I looked at it funny, because it's called The Brothers K by David James Duncan. I've never heard of David James Duncan. I've definitely never heard of The Brothers K besides The Brothers Karamazov. And so when I saw it on the shelf, I was like, what is this? Like an American retelling, or is it some like literary review of The Brothers Karamazov? I had no clue. And he tossed it in, and so I got the package recently, and I'm very excited to read it. It has raving reviews on Goodreads. I think it's something like a 4.39, so very high rating, which doesn't always mean that it's a perfect book or that it's going to be great for me, but it seems very interesting. And when I was talking to John, the bookstore owner, we seem to have the same taste, which you'll see with some of the books here that I ended up picking off a shelf that was labeled John's recommendations. So I have a feeling that this will be an interesting and good read for me. The next book is one that wasn't on my radar, never heard of the book, never heard of the writer, and I told my wife I wanted to do more of this, because sometimes I'm buying too many books that are either obvious classics, or they're authors I've already read, or more so, I buy off recommendations from BookTube, from Bookstagram, they're a bit commonly read, you know. It's not kind of off the wall type of book to read. So I was picking up some extra books, trying to find something that's a bit more off my radar to read, and I ended up getting A Man Survives by Vladimir Maximov. That's the name, right? Yeah, okay. A Man Survives, Vladimir Maximov. And it's this very short paperback, about 100 pages. I think I'm going to try and read it this weekend, because I think it'll be very quick. But it's a story covering, I believe, a runaway, he says here, a runaway smuggler, vagabond, and murderer. It's like a runaway prisoner in Russia. And I don't know, I just briefly read that. I read a few pages within the book to see, get a feel for the writing style, get a feel if I would enjoy it. And I think I would. $5. I said, what the hell? Let me read that. That'll be an interesting short story to read. So, A Man Survives, Vladimir Maximov. I couldn't find a ton about the writer of the book online. So I'd be interested if you guys have read any of his works before. The next is Rainer Maria Rilke. I got The Letters to a Young Poet. I've been looking for his poems, and I kind of realized after I picked it up that this is letters, it's not quite poems, but either way, I wanted to read some Rilke. I need to get into poetry. I was looking for Emily Dickinson as well, and I saw copies of hers in different stores, but they were brand new copies, collected books, or a collection of her poems. And I try and avoid paying full price for brand new copies. I think it's more fun to go and find used editions, and also it saves your wallet a bit. So unfortunately, I didn't find any of Dickinson, but she's one I plan to buy soon to get into poetry a bit more, and Rilke as well. So if you guys have any like favorite poets, favorite poems, leave it in the comments, and I'll be sure to look out for those as I start to branch out more into poetry, because I do need to read more poetry. And more so, I need to read more genres. I'm really close to reading some more history. I follow a few bookstagrams that are big, like history buffs. And so I want to dip into history and biographies and different genres a bit more, especially heading into 2025. The next book is an author that I listened to a long podcast on, did a really deep dive on him. I've heard some stuff about him, and I follow one bookstagram that is heavily into Mishima and Faulkner, which is an interesting combo. But that's who it is, Yukio Mishima. And finally found a copy of his books. I couldn't really find it in any stores. And this happens to be The Sailor Who Fell from the Grace of the Sea. I think this is like his second or third published work. Perhaps I'm wrong with that. But this will hopefully give me a good taste of Mishima. Like I said, the podcast I listened to is very interesting. He's a very distinct figure, a very quirky kind of guy. and obviously a cult type figure in Japan at the time. So this will be an interesting read. And I'm interested to see again how his writing style, how potentially flowery or yeah, just creative it is. The next book is My Struggle, Book 1 by Knoxville. This is a book that I've heard Chris at Leaf by Leaf praise, but I've also heard awful things as well. And I was actually talking to the book owner, the store owner, about it because I asked him because he had the Archipelago editions, but I also saw this edition. I figured I'd get something a little bit different. And I asked him, what did you think of My Struggle? Did you like it? And he did. And I asked him, I think a lot of books like Knoxville can be off-putting for some people because they're garrulous, they're rambling on and on about menial tasks or trivial matters, and they seem to just be blabbering on and on about nothing. And I think that can be true and also be delightful for some readers, also be something very enjoyable for some readers and deplorable for others. So knowing that the store owner liked similar books that I did, he was cool with An Infinite Jest, he was cool with some of these different writers that are quite verbose, I figured I'd pick it up. So excited to kind of read Min Comp, which is his 6-volume autobiography, see how it is for me. I think it'll really depend on the first book. The first book's got to sell me on the next 5, so we'll see where it goes. The next is a book I'm very excited to read. I think I'll read it either in October, if not November. And it's a woman I've heard a lot of great things about, and that is Susan Sontag. And I happened to get her collection of essays called Under the Sign of Saturn. And what a beautiful copy. Hopefully it's not too much of a glare, and I can get a good show for you guys. But very beautiful hardback here. And I've really been not only meaning to read more Sontag, like read Sontag and get into her works, but also essays. So along with any poem recommendations, if you guys have favorite essays or essayists, I'd like to know as well, because I think I'd like to read more essays. Joe Spivey and his Hitchathon series has kind of turned me on to wanting to read Hitchens, and I did find in McKay's a hardback copy of arguably that collection, but it just looked massive, and I was like, I'm not getting that back in a flight, so I didn't get that. But I would like to read more essays. So if you guys have a favorite essayist, anything like that, leave it in the comments below as well. But very excited to read Sontag, and like I said, I think I'll read this quite soon. And the last book is it's a big boy. It's a collection. And it's another writer I've been keeping an eye out for. I've seen him in some stores here locally in Colorado, but I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. I haven't seen like a price that I really liked, and that is Jorge Luis Borges. And this is a collection. I don't know if it has all of his works, but it has a big chunk of them. So what I plan to do is kind of nibble at this, read a few at a time or read one at a time every once in a while. And I also wanted to buy this just because I think it's a very pretty copy, a very nice edition. It has the dust jacket. So anyhow, I thought this would be a good place to kind of start. And I was just confident that I would like him because I really only hear good things about Borges. So that is, yeah, a piece I'm excited to read. So that was the haul from the Book Eddy. It was just a massive amount of just delectable books right here. So that's it for this video. Too many books probably to count, and probably the last book haul for a while. Sometimes I feel bad just constantly doing book haul videos because booktube and reading is about reading, it's about the books, it's not just about buying books. But I also wanted to just share this haul and share my excitement with a lot of these books, because it is a lot of new authors and even in a way new genres, with Rilke's letters or Sontag's essays that I haven't delved into yet. So with all that said, be happy to hear your recommendations or thoughts in the comments below. I guess I won't be buying your recommendations soon because I need to be a good boy and give my wallet a break here. But they will easily be added to my TBR, added to my Goodreads, and I'll keep an eye out for them. So like the video if you enjoyed it, please comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Subscribe for more content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.